Good day everyone, I am Ira Marie Himata and today we will talk about the terms used in literary criticism. But before that, what is a term? A term is a word or phrase used to describe a thing or to express a concept, especially in a particular kind of language or branch of study. Term is a word or group of words designating something. Literary criticism is the comparison, analysis, interpretation, and/or evaluation of works of literature. Literary criticism is essentially an opinion supported by evidence relating to theme, style, setting, or historical or political context. It usually includes discussion of the work's contents and integrates your ideas with other insights gained from research. Literary criticism may have a positive or negative bias and may be a study of an individual piece of literature or an author's body of work.
Aesthetics. Philosophical investigation into the nature of beauty and the perception of beauty, especially in the arts, the theory of art or artistic taste. It examines subjective and sensory emotional values, or sometimes called judgment of sentiment and taste. It is by fact the way of finding and appreciating the beauty of novels in a positive way. Ambiguity. Openness to different interpretations, or an instance in which some use of language may be understood in diverse ways. Defended by modern literary critics as a source of poetic richness rather than a fault of imprecision. It has been suggested that because of the short stories' highly compressed form, ambiguity may play a more important role in the form than it does in the novel. The antagonist. Character in fiction who stands in opposition or rivalry to the protagonist. In Shakespeare's Hamlet, Prince of Denmark, for example, King Claudius is the antagonist of Hamlet. Anti-hero. A central figure in a work that repels us by his or her actions or morality, yet who is not a villain. The anti-hero accomplishes a useful purpose or even does heroic deeds. One of the greatest examples would be Severus Snape. J.K. Rowling created an anti-hero who is the polar opposite of Harry Potter. A classic hero in every sense of the word. At every turn, it appears that Severus Snape is another one of Harry Potter's enemies. But despite his dark moods, unlikable personality, and sometimes downright mean actions, Rowling explains his true backstory and reveals his role in protecting Harry Potter. Archetype. Term used by psychologist Carl Jung to describe what he called primordial images, which exist in the collective unconscious of humankind and are manifested in myths, religion, literature, and dreams. Now used broadly in literary criticism to refer to character types, motifs, images, symbols, and plot patterns recurring in many different literary forms and works. The embodiment of archetypes in a work of literature can make a powerful impression on the reader. Black humor or black comedy, a general term of modern origin that refers to a form of sick humor that is intended to produce laughter out of the morbid and the taboo. It is also a subgenre of humor that uses cruelty or terrible situations to make the reader or viewer laugh, sometimes uncomfortably. Canon, a body of works considered authentic, and in the body of works actually written by a particular author are considered by a particular culture or subculture to be central to its cultural identity. The literary canon can be narrowly defined as that which is accepted as authentic, but it is usually defined more broadly as that which is assumed to be good literature, in fact the best literature, that which is worth preserving and passing on from one generation to the next. An example of this would be To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee, Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald, and many more. Caricature. Form of writing that focuses on unique qualities of a person and then exaggerates and distorts those qualities in order to ridicule the person and what he or she represents. Writers such as Flannery O'Connor have used caricature for serious and satiric purposes in such stories as Good Country People and A Good Man is Hard to Find. Comic story. Form encompassing a wide variety of modes and inflections such as parody, burlesque, satire, irony, and humor. Frequently, the defining quality of comic characters is that they lack self-awareness. The readers tend not to identify with them but perceives them from a detached point of view, more as objects than persons. Conte, French for tale, a conte was originally a short adventure tale. In the 19th century, the term was used to describe a tightly constructed short story. In England, the term is used to describe a work longer than a short story and shorter than a novel. Deconstruction. Literary theory, primarily attributed to French critic Jacques Derrida, which has spawned a wide variety of practical applications, the most prominent being the critical tactic of laying bare a text's self-reflexivity, that is, showing how it continually refers to and subverts its own way of meaning. Determinism or deterministic, the quality of a narrative or character that leads only to a single conclusion. We know, for example, that certain characters are doomed to fail whatever they do. So these novels of like this are like one lane story, like you know what would happen in the end. Didactic, a work designed to impart information, advice, or some doctrine of morality or philosophy. Is a literature that seeks to instruct, give guidance, or teach a lesson. Didactic literature normally has a moral, religious, or philosophical purpose, or it will expound a branch of knowledge. It is distinguished from imaginative works in which the aesthetic product takes precedence over any moral intent. Fabulation. Term coined by Robert Scholes and used in contemporary literary criticism to describe novels radically experimental in subject matter, style, and form. Like the magical realists, fabulators mix realism with fantasy. It is also a term used by modern critics for a mode of modern fiction that openly delights in its self-conscious verbal artifice, thus departing from the conventions of realism. Robert Scholes, in his book *The Fabulators* (1967), describes fabulation in the works of John Barth, Kurt Vonnegut, and others as an essentially comic and allegorical mode of fiction that often adopts the forms of romance or of the picaresque novel. Fatal flaw. A character trait that leads to tragedy both in characters who are otherwise quite admirable and in terrible villains. Examples include King Lear's blind trust in his daughters, Eve's desire for knowledge, Ahab's thirst for revenge, Darth Vader's will to power, or Pandora's curiosity. Gendered. When a work is approached as thematically or stylistically specific to male or female characteristics or concerns, it is said to be gendered. It could either flow to a more masculine portrayal or a more feminine one. Genre study. Concept of studying literature by classification and definition of types or kinds, such as tragedy, comedy, epic, lyrical, and pastoral. First, introduced by Aristotle in Poetics, the genre principle has been an essential concomitant to the basic proposition that literature can be studied scientifically. Malaprop or malapropism. Malapropism occurs when one word is confused with another because of a similarity in sound between them. The term is derived from the character Mistress Malaprop in Richard Brinsley Sheridan's The Rivals of 1775, who, for example, uses the word illiterate when when she really means obliterate and mistakes progeny for prodigy. Metafiction refers to fiction that manifests a reflexive tendency, such as Vladimir Nabokov's Pale Fire of 1962 and John Fall's The French Lieutenant's Women, 1969. The emphasis is on the loosening of the work's illusion of reality to expose the reality of its illusion. Such terms as irrealism, postmodernist fiction, and anti-fiction are also used to refer to this type of fiction. Motif. Incident or situation in a story that serves as the basis of its structure, creating by repetition and variation a pattern's recurrence and consequently a general theme. Russian formalist critics distinguish between bound motifs, which cannot be omitted without disturbing the thematic structure of the story, and unbound motifs, which serve merely to create the illusion of external reality. Narrative persona. Persona means literally mask. It is the self created by the author and through whom the narrative is told. The persona is not to be identified with the author, even when the two may seem to resemble each other. The narrative persona in George Gordon, Lord Byron's Don Juan, 1819 to 1824, for example, may express many sentiments of which Byron would have approved, but is nevertheless a fictional creation who is distinct from the author. Narrator. A character who recounts the narrative. There are many different types of narrators. The first-person narrator is a character in the story and can be recognized by his or her use of I. Third-person narrators may be limited or omniscient. In the former, the narrator is confined to knowledge of the minds and emotions of one, or at most a few characters. In the latter, the narrator knows everything, seeing into the minds of all the characters. Rarely, second-person narration may be used. Post-apocalyptic. Fictional worlds depicting life after a global disaster such as a nuclear holocaust, alien invasion, or ecological collapse. The tone is usually grim. Protagonist. Central figures in a novel or film. Originally, in the Greek drama, the first actor who played the leading role. The term has come to signify the most important character in a drama or a story. It is not unusual for a work to contain more than one protagonist. Satire, form of literature that employs the comedic devices of wit, irony, and exaggeration to expose, ridicule, and condemn human folly, vice, and stupidity. Justifying satire, Alexander Pope wrote that nothing moves strongly but satire, and those who are ashamed of nothing else are so of being ridiculous. Structuralism. Structuralism is based on the idea of intrinsic self-sufficient structures that do not require reference to external elements. The structuralist literary critic attempts by using model derived from modern linguistic theory to define the structural principles that operate intertextually throughout the whole of literature as well as principles that operate in genres and individual works. Style. Style is the manner of expression or how the writer tells the story. The most appropriate style is that which is perfectly suited to conveying whatever idea, emotion, or other effect that the author wishes to convey. Elements of style include diction, sentence structure, imagery, rhythm, and coherence. Theme. Loosely defined as what a literary work means, theme is the underlying idea, the abstract concept that the author is trying to convey. The search for love, the growth of wisdom, or some such formulation. The theme of William Butler Yeats' poem Sailing to Byzantium, for example, might be interpreted as the failure of the attempt to isolate oneself within the world of art. Tone. Strictly defined, tone is the author's attitudes towards their subjects, their personas, themselves, their audiences, or their societies. The tone of a work may be serious, playful, formal, informal, morose, loving, ironic, and so on. It can be thought of as the dominant mood of a work, and it plays a large part in the total effect. Trope. Literally turn or conversion, a figure of speech in which a word or phrase is used in a way that deviates from the normal or literal sense. Any kind of literary device or any specific example can be a trope. Most often, the word is used to refer to tropes that are widespread, such as irony, metaphor, juxtaposition, and hyperbole, or themes such as the noble savage or the reluctant hero. It must be used multiple times to be a trope, but it is also possible to talk about something that's a trope in only one novel or one of the author's works if it is used many times. Verisimilitude. When used in literary criticism, verisimilitude refers to the degree to which a literary work gives the appearance of being true or real, even though the events depicted may in fact be far removed from the actual. Vignette. Sketch, essay, or brief narrative characterized by precision, economy, and grace. The term can also be applied to brief short stories less than 500 words long. There are also short scenes that captures a single moment or defining detail about a character, idea, or other element of the story. Vignettes are mostly descriptive. In fact, they often include little or no plot detail. They are not standalone literary works, nor are they complete plots or narratives. Instead, vignettes are small parts of a larger work and can only exist as piece of a whole story.
And that concludes my discussion. Thank you for listening, everyone. Good day.